What's up, everybody? I'm Taylor, and I started this channel from my heart to share my personal recovery journey. I want to share about how recovery, how healing, how people, how knowledge and research and all of the things that I've learned the past 3 years, how they contribute to why I'm able to have more control over how I react to my anxiety. See, for me, what I've learned, it's not about getting rid of the anxiety. It's not about getting rid of the anger, or even there are days that I just feel empty inside, and I just accept those days because I know it's going to pass and I know it's going to get better. So it's not about getting rid of the emotions that I don't want to feel. For me, it's about surrendering to the emotions. Okay. So for me, I have anxiety. I don't like to say things that way, but I definitely agree 100% that I have anxiety. And I'm pretty sure I have had anxiety my entire life. I was just always too intoxicated to realize what anxiety was. And I remember when I got sober for the first time, 10 years ago, that was the first time I had actually felt what anxiety was on a physical level. And it didn't matter throughout the years, what medicine I took. Yes, physically, it kept me regulated and calm, but the thoughts in my head never changed. So what I realized is that when I came to recovery 3 years ago, I speak about this a lot because it's an important part of my journey. I was on so many different medications that I was so physically, emotionally, and spiritually numbed. So I had zero anxiety, I had zero emotions. I could not feel emotions. I could feel anger, but not even in the sense that I can feel anger today. It was more of a mood change instead of feeling the intensity of the emotions. And so I remember for almost 2 years when I came off my meds, I did not take any meds, and I naturally tried to heal my nervous system. And the first 6 months I came off my meds, I was really struggling with emotional dysregulation on a physical level, not a mental level, a physical level, and anxiety. Growing up, I was the only child, so I did have cousins that I played with, and we would go in the neighborhood and stuff, but I was never around large groups of people or at large events. Even when I spent my life in active addiction, I would hang out with people at their house. I wouldn't go to huge parties and things like that. So I never really developed that skill of being around people in general. So that is something that I had to identify for me and work on with me. But also, I realized when I came into recovery that I had to change the way I spoke to myself, because I would have a full-blown panic attack and I would intensify the attack by the way I would talk to myself in my head. I would make it more dramatic and more worse than what it really had to be. Now, I realized I needed to change the way I spoke to myself, and eventually with the repetition, honestly, in order to change the way I spoke to myself, I had to first become self-aware of when I was speaking to myself unnicely. I had to become self-aware of when that inner critic was speaking to me, and I had to stop it, and I had to reframe what it said. So my main thing that I would think about is, I'm a piece of shit, you're not good enough. Those were my two main core beliefs, right? And so when I would think that I got to a level of self-awareness where I was self-aware that I was thinking it, and I would say out loud, I'm not a piece of shit, I am good enough. And I would say all the good things that I was doing in my life out loud to remind myself who I was in the past is not who I'm trying to be now, and I'm taking action to be a better version of myself. So that would kind of get me out the past and bring me back to the present. So I realized that I have the power within myself, and I have a choice. I can choose to listen to the voice that tells me I'm a piece of crap, I'm not good enough, and I can choose to believe it. I can also choose to acknowledge it, but that doesn't mean I have to believe it. I can choose to see it, and I can choose to hear it, and I can choose to acknowledge it, but I don't have to take action on what it's telling me, right? That inner critic is what I'm talking about. So it's my choice if I want to believe the inner critic or not. And I believed it for so long. It was a part of my identity. The things that I had done in my life to myself and others were the reason that inner critic was active. And so the reason I say all this stuff is because for me to gain my reaction to my anxiety, I have chosen to put in a lot of inner work. I needed more than meetings. I needed more than the 12-step literature. I mean, I had to learn all the different types of techniques that are out there, CBT, DBT, ACT. I recently came across MCBT, which is mindful cognitive behavioral therapy. And it's interestingly, when I came across this recent technique, I was so excited because I'm like, this is exactly what I do when I have painful or negative untrue thoughts. This is exactly what technique I use. So it felt good to actually find a technique that has already been published that I already use on a daily basis. And I can put the free PDF in this video, and it's like really simple to understand, really simple to read, and it's broken down into like 7 or 8 sessions. It's like 67 pages long, but it speaks about being mindfully aware of our thoughts and not attaching to them, detaching from our thoughts, observing our thoughts without becoming a part of our thoughts. And meditation has helped me with that. Help doesn't even emphasize how much meditation contributes to my self-awareness, to my ability to change my reaction to my emotions, my reaction of when I do have a panic attack. And I use this example a lot because I started my recovery through Zoom meetings, and I was still very anxious and full of anxiety doing Zoom meetings, but in a sense, I was more anxious to go to in-person meetings. And so like I would have to force myself to share, force myself to have my camera on. But I have found for me that once I get familiar with my environment, that my anxiety dials down. It's just actually the hard part for me is getting familiar with my environment. And that's exactly what it was for going to the in-person women's rehab that I've been going to for well over a year, maybe a year and a half. Like I would walk in there with my head low, like crunched up, like looking around like I was tweaking or something, like looking at everybody. Like I'm the type of person, you know, people go to in-person meetings or anywhere in life and there's one individual speaking and everybody's like focusing on that one individual, right? I'm the person that's looking at every single other person in the room, looking at that individual. And that's a trauma response, or that is a response of me not feeling safe in my environment around people that are unfamiliar, okay? And instead of beating myself up that my brain is that way, I've learned to love that part of my brain, and I've learned to accept that that's my brain, and it's okay. I don't have to be like everyone else, right? It's cool. This is who I am, and I'm going to embrace who I am, and I'm going to share it with the world so it can help other people learn to accept themselves for who they are. And so let's bring it back. I started going once a week, no matter what, facing the uncomfortable feelings, learning how to manage my anxiety naturally without any medication. And let me throw this in there. I was also sepsis when I started doing this. And so the sepsis made me believe that it was like more of a mental health thing, not like in my head, but like emotional dysregulation, and like my anxiety was like worse than what it actually was. And once I had actually gotten antibiotics, I found out that sepsis played a large part in why like my anxiety felt so much more intense than what it really was. But my point is I forced myself to keep going back. And while I would be in the meetings, I would have a notebook and a pen, and I would be interconnected to myself. And I would be like, what's going on right now? What's causing you to feel this way? And like, I would ask myself questions, and I could, this is the thing, okay? I would identify exactly why I'm feeling the way I am and why. But it did not make me not feel the way that I was feeling, okay? And this is really important in my recovery, and it's still important today. Like, I can identify all day long, I feel like this because of blah, blah, blah. But I am responsible for reframing the way I feel. Like, you know, I have a lot of PTSD. So, for example, certain women in and at the rehabs can activate me. And I know it's internal. It's not external. I know this is internal, but it's the truth due to past experiences I've had in my past with women who look like them. Okay, so, and same goes for other people that I come in contact with that look like people from my past that have hurt me or abused me. That can activate me also. That can cause anxiety, and that can cause some PTSD to come up. But the difference is that I'm aware of this about myself. So that makes it a lot easier to be like, okay, I know that my body and my brain is acting like this based on an experience in the past that I can't remember. My body is reacting, okay? And so what I do is I remind myself that I am here, I am not in the past, and this person is not the person from the past. Like, that's the type of stuff I tell myself. I redirect my thinking to the present. And that's the goal for me. It's thinking logic, present moment, instead of basing it off past experiences and fear and things that my brain will try to tell me that aren't true. But in order for me to get to this level, to be able to do these things, I had to put in, and like I said, I chose to put in a lot of inner work, okay? I found for me that I can't really remember. I had just started, actually, it was about 2 years ago, I started going outside in silence, and that's when my little meditation routine started happening slowly but gradually. I didn't just go sit outside and meditate. You know, for me, it's just like sitting outside in silence and being mindful of nature, being mindful of my thoughts, being mindful that my heart is beating, looking up at the sky, like things like that. That is a type of meditation too. And I know for me, I would hear meditation and I would think of like somebody sitting with their legs crossed and just in a position. But meditation means so much more than that. And I had to learn that through other people and through books and research, and honestly, through my own experience of how I feel and what works for me when it comes to meditating. So around the time I started this whole meditation thing, that's when I started going to the women's rehab. And like I said, I went every week, no matter how I felt physically, mentally, or emotionally. And before recovery, like if I was pissed off or if I was sad or if I felt empty or low, I would just say, screw my commitments, right? But what recovery's taught me is to show up no matter what. And I take that very seriously, because I know for me that if I don't maintain my daily recovery schedule, then all it takes is for me of saying, oh, I'm just going to skip this one thing today. And then tomorrow comes around, oh, well, you know what? We'll just skip this other thing today. And then that's how it starts for me. And then it's a chain reaction. And before you know it, I'm in bed, sleeping all day, scrolling on YouTube. So I take my recovery really serious because I spent my whole life being a fuck up. And that's the truth. I spent my whole life not being responsible, not keeping commitments, not being trustworthy, not being nice and loving to myself, right? So I had to take my recovery seriously. And there are still things today that my heart is guiding me to do, that fear is holding me back from doing it. But my point of sharing the rehab story is that today I can walk in the rehab. I actually, you know, the first rehab I started going to was for like 1.5 years. maybe less than that. I got used to the environment. Even the staff could see a major improvement in me, which feels so good when people actually point out your growth, right? I felt different, you know, and like, so I was like, you know what? It's time to challenge myself. I'm going to start going to the other rehab. And I started going over there, and I wanted to share this. I've noticed for me, if I walk in a room full of these women and nobody's smiling or laughing and everybody just like has a face like this and they look like pissed off, my brain can interpret it as like they're pissed off. They might not even really be pissed off. They might just, they're going through some stuff. They're in their own heads, right? It has nothing to do with me. And logically, I know that. And I never think that. I don't take it personal. But the energy in the room can affect me. So what I realized a while ago is when I was dealing with this whole anxiety, intensity of the anxiety when I first started going to the women's meeting, like I was like in a full-blown panic attack. But I was like sitting there and you could tell, people could tell, you know, I wasn't like flashing out, but like my breathing and just the way I was fidgeting, people could tell. And somebody started making jokes and laughing and they made me laugh and I started laughing. My anxiety instantly dialed down. So I have found that for me, sometimes it's as simple as just like striking up a joke and making some laughter. And it even happened at a doctor's appointment I went to. Like I was so like on defense mode because of everything that's happened to me. And the nurse practitioner could tell. And she was talking to me, asking me these questions. And I just looked like this, you know, and she could tell that I was having anxiety. And she was being so nice and so sweet, and she made me start laughing. And instantly when I started laughing, I felt better. So sometimes for me, all I need is a little laughter. So the way I speak to myself matters when I have panic attacks and when I have anxiety. The way I handle that, right? You know, I had to build skills. I had to build healthy coping mechanisms. I had to learn to change the way I spoke to myself, you know, and also what I've learned with me, because with going to the women's rehab, this is my first time in my whole entire life where I am where I am in life, like as in my recovery status or like just healthy in my healing journey, okay? That this is the first time I'm starting to have like healthy interactions with people that don't involve addiction or dysfunction. So I'm having to teach myself through ChatGTP. I cannot begin to emphasize, and I'm not trying to promote anything or get anyone to buy anything. I would never do that, trust me. But this app, and I don't even pay for it, but a person can only like ask it so many questions per day and then it stops for that day. But it is helping me so much improve my communication skills. Like, for example, I'm working with somebody and it can be hard for me. Like when I'm talking to somebody and they start crying and talking about something painful they went through, I can start to get anxiety. And the reason is because I'm rehearsing in my head, what am I going to say to this person? I don't want to make them more upset. I don't want to sound cold. I don't want to sound like I'm not being supportive. And what I've realized is that I handled it well, although I had anxiety. And it's okay to just hold silence sometimes. It's okay to not respond to somebody. It's okay to not tell them, oh, everything's going to be okay. Like, it's okay to just sit there and tell them, this is a safe place to cry. I hear you. I see you. And that's it. And so later that day, I went on ChatGTP and I asked it, like, what are some communication things that I can say back to somebody after they have cried about something painful from their past? Gave me a whole list of different type of communication sentences that I could say. And that's what I mean when I have to continuously work on myself. And that's what I mean when I say having self-awareness to identify, hey, maybe I should improve my communication skills when people are grieving and crying. Maybe I need to go research that to see what a better way of handling that can be or would have been. Self-reflection plays a major part in my recovery, and it will always, because when I self-reflect, I see the situation, I see my part in it, and I can kind of put myself in the other person's shoes, right? But not too much of over-analyzing, just sympathy, empathy, to see how they were feeling in that moment. And I can say, okay, now what would have been a healthier response to this? How can I respond differently next time? And writing it down, and then after I self-reflect, I read it out loud. And I want to share this also, is that with me, I've realized that when I surrender to my anxiety instead of fight against it, when my anxiety starts chattering in my head, listening to it without trying to fight it or wanting it not to be there, and just observing what it's telling me and acknowledging it, but having enough self-awareness to know, hey, these are from past experiences. Like, the things that my anxiety tells me are not true. And logically, I know that, but it took me a very long time until I could get to this point of realizing that they were lies. Anxiety is trying to protect me. It's not trying to hurt me. It's trying to protect my vulnerability. It's trying to protect me physically, emotionally, and mentally. Anxiety's intentions are to prevent me from having to deal with pain. So changing my perspective towards anxiety's intention has also helped me a lot. Instead of looking at it as something bad or harmful or shouldn't be there, I'll look at it, it's there to help me, even though it's hurting me and doesn't realize it. It's only acting on past experiences. And the more healthy experiences I have, the more good experiences I have, the better it has gotten for me. Okay, so anxiety still comes up on a day-to-day basis, but my reaction to it has changed. But I had to start somewhere. And where I started to help me learn how to overcome it was facing my fear of going to in-person meetings. And that's exactly what I did. And that's the only way that growth has been able to happen for me. I'll never forget, this old wise man who I admire told me that if it's not comfortable, it's not growth. If you're too comfortable, you're not growing. Growth is going to be uncomfortable. And he said it differently, of course, but that's what I got out of it. So, like, I got complacent in my AA Zoom meeting home group. I got complacent, and I was attending that meeting twice a day for over a year and a half, maybe longer. And I realized that I cannot continue to live the rest of my life going to the same meeting, doing the same thing every day. And so that's when I had to force myself to start going to other Zoom meetings and facing that fear of that uncomfortable feeling. And I started attending refuge recovery meetings, and I had so much anxiety in the beginning, I wouldn't even turn my camera on. And it took me like almost 3 months to finally get to a place of where I can turn my camera on and be okay. So for me, my anxiety dies down when I get familiar with my environment. And that's only if I'm in an environment that's safe. I would never put myself in an unsafe environment because that's not healthy. I would never put myself around unsafe people. I would never put myself around people who make me feel bad about myself, who criticize me, who physically or verbally or emotionally abuse me. Today, I choose to be around people who make me feel good about myself, who support me, who encourage me, and who make me feel emotionally safe. So for me, healing is a lifelong process, and I choose to put in a lot of inner work to change the conditioning and the programming and to teach myself the things that I was not taught growing up. So recovery is more than just not picking up a substance. Recovery is about becoming self-aware of our behaviors, actions, and attitudes and patterns and belief systems, and being willing to change them through action and repetition and open-mindedness and seeking out guidance from other people. And that's the only way my recovery is working for me.